Hi, and welcome to a new episode of the High Tech Farmer Podcast. Today, my guest will be Henry Gordon Smith, who is the Chief Agritech at Agritecture, which is a consultation company that helps ag businesses be profitable. We had an interesting talk on a variety of topics, so sit back and enjoy the episode. Hi, Henry. So, how did you come up with the name Agritech?
Agritecture was a blog. I started three blogs in college. I was exploring climate change, and agritecture was one of them. And yeah, it just came to me. I always wanted to be an architect, and I was thinking about farming in the city. And I was thinking, okay, well, you kind of have to be an architect to farm, to like design farms in the city, to think like an architect. It's not the same as designing farms outside of the city because you have people, you have various buildings that can affect the shade. You have aesthetic considerations.
Mm-hmm.
So
Yep.
you might not need architects to plan farms, but you need to have architects to plan farms in the city. So agri-texture.
Yeah. And why did you get into the farming business?
I was studying political science and had a professor that was teaching about water wars. So this is like environmental security,
Yep.
why nations fight over resources and how that
Mm-hmm.
happens. And I'm like, my mind was like blown because this wasn't on the news. And I thought this is such a major issue. And as you look at water, you inevitably end up looking at food. And
Yeah.
I thought it was just so interesting that our society globally has become more urban. And I knew nothing about agriculture. Like I was born in Hong Kong. I grew up in Hong Kong and Tokyo,
Mm-hmm.
big cities. I didn't see any farms. My
Mm-hmm.
parents, when I was a teenager, wanted to move away from the city and got a country house and built some greenhouses and gardens. And I would go out there. I wasn't really super interested in it. But I started really thinking about, again, environmental security. Like, what do we need to do to keep humanity more stabilized? And obviously, food and water are really two really important things. So it really started with water and
Mm-hmm.
policy, and then moving into food and agriculture under the broader sort of idea of using business to respond to the climate crisis.
Yeah. I haven't really seen many businesses like Agritecture. So could you please explain to the audience what exactly do you do and what services you provide? I've also seen that you have a farm planning software, which I haven't seen nowhere. So,
Yeah, so I mean, Agritecture, the blog started in 2011,
yep.
and that's a fundamental part of our business because it's our identity, it's our DNA, it's about us sharing the latest technologies and news and our perspective about how do we think about the future of farming and cities, but almost farming locally. I mean, nowadays our blog, we've been going for a long time, so we've broadened to, let's say, more climate smart agriculture overall. But that's a key part of our business because it's where our first customer came from for the second part of our business, which is
Uh-huh.
the consulting. So as interest rose for vertical farming and urban agriculture and greenhouses in cities, there wasn't really anyone that gave you advice on the business, on the technology, on the design, on the strategy, unless they were selling you equipment.
Uh-huh.
And that's not necessarily wrong. Like there's nothing wrong with that. You can go to an equipment provider and they'll tell you some information. But if you're an entrepreneur or if you're an investor, you know, you don't even know what questions to ask. And so
Yeah.
agritecture served a really important role in developing the industry because we answered those questions. So
Uh-huh.
basically, people started contacting me from the blog, and in 2014, we started consulting. And it began with a first project, which was we have a building, how much could we grow in this building, and how much would it cost? And then it became another project where it was a school that wanted to build some farms in their school, and they wanted to build activities so that the students could learn these things. And it sort of grew from there very organically, and we
Yep.
built various methodologies. So our core services on the second part of the business, the consulting, which is the main part of the business, I would say now, is feasibility studies, farm design services. We even do master planning of new cities and neighborhoods and the food system for them.
Uh-huh.
We do policy planning for cities. on how to incentivize and develop the policies and legislation for these kinds of farms. We advise investors on due diligence when they're looking at new
Okay.
technologies in farms. We even advise some corporations on their strategy related to sourcing or developing or being part of this industry. But it all relates to the same sort of idea of growing food using technology to be more efficient. It's typically local, it's typically hydroponic or greenhouse, but it has broadened a lot, but it's a wide range of clients. So that's number two, is the consulting practice. Now we do make a little bit of money on the marketing now because people want to access our audience. So we work with a select number of equipment providers and projects, and when they do sponsored content, and that's why I listed that as a part of our business. Now in 2020, when COVID hit and the world became more digital, we went internally and we said, what can we do to become a more digital company and respond to this and meet people where they need to be? And we sort of decided that there was a lot of questions that we were getting that were similar. So we said, let's make a software product that's like a farm planning software, so people don't actually have to hire us for the stuff that's really typical. Like if you're planning a $1 million greenhouse, yes, there's different ways to do it, but there's not a million ways to do it. So we spent a lot of time and money to put that all into a digital platform, as well as imagining like a step-by-step process from online classes to market research, to modeling your farm, to finding equipment providers and financing your farm. All of that can be done on our platform, Agritecture Designer. So those are the three parts of Agritecture's business. And it's very exciting.
That's cool. I thought the software is more like incorporated within your services, that when you provide consultation to someone, you also work with that software. So that's like a separate part more of.
Yeah, it's a separate part. I think, as any consulting business grows, you tend to get more clients that are, let's say, larger or more sophisticated than when you start, right? So when you start, you don't have as big of a portfolio. So what happened is like, we're getting much bigger clients, much more sophisticated clients. So it doesn't make sense for us to help every single entrepreneur, even though those were our first customers. So the product is a way for us to deliver to those customers, even though we don't service them as much on the consulting side. Now, we do use our software sometimes for consulting. I will say that. We customize it for certain clients because essentially it's based around our core models that we use for consulting. So we have core models for greenhouses of different types. We have databases on markets. We have databases on climate conditions. We have databases on crop performance, data technologies. And the software lets users access parts of those models and get reports, but they don't get full models that are customized, which is what our consulting clients get. So it's like, we moved up as far as the sophistication of our clients and the size of our clients.
Okay.
But we didn't want to, again, lose our first customers because we were passionate about helping everyone answer these questions. But yeah.
Okay. So are there some companies that you decline to cooperate with because it wouldn't be the right fit given the size or other criteria?
Yeah, what an interesting question. I haven't gotten asked that question before, so that's a nice. I like when I get different questions because I do these interviews a lot. We have denied clients because they ethically don't match what we care about. So, for example, we tend to lean towards projects where we can that have a focus on some sustainability impact. Not all of our clients care a lot about that, and they don't have to. Inherently, our projects have some aspect of sustainability benefit, whether it's, land use or water savings, et cetera. But for example, there are big corporations that we don't necessarily agree with their practices that have asked to work with us, and we've rejected that. We've also rejected certain projects that are focused on exporting food versus providing it locally. So, we're not always against that, but in some cases we're not a big fan of that. We don't see the point of that for our objective, which is to really help humanity adapt to climate change through smarter agriculture. That's our mission, right? So we try to stick to that mission. And I think sometimes we've denied projects just because they're too small or because they're they want to do something that we're not good at, right? So some
Mm-hmm.
projects want to hire us for. I had one group, they want to do a snail farm, right, for escargot, and I'm
Mm-hmm.
like, I love. We do a lot of projects that are new crops, but I mean there's a level of knowledge we need to have to contribute, right? And I think that we're not the best for snail farm consulting yet.
So there was my other question. I've seen you only work with like plant crops. Do you also advise on animal husbandry or not?
We don't really advise on animal husbandry. We're
Yeah.
mostly horticulture focused. Um, we've broadened from just like leafy greens and herbs and things like
Yeah.
that with in urban farms, which is where we started. Those are typical crops. But we do,
Yeah.
we do vine crops, we do tomatoes, we've done melons. Now we've done a lot more projects that have soil-based projects in them. We've done mushrooms. We've done some
Mm-hmm.
aquaculture, so not animal husbandry, but some aquaculture projects. We've done a little bit of like goats and chickens, but
Mm-hmm.
not cattle. And that's just, I don't know. I wouldn't say that we're totally opposed to it. I mean, there's ways to do that kind of agriculture that is more sustainable,
Yeah.
but it's just not part of our practice right now. We have a partner organization called AgTech Insight, which provides more like, I would say not conventional, but let's say field agriculture consulting that includes animal
Mm-hmm.
husbandry. And we will sort of send them leads, and they'll send us leads that are more related to greenhouses and urban farms and things like that that they don't do. So we find that that works pretty well for us.
Okay. And so you've worked in some 40 plus countries. And so what countries do you think have the biggest potential in terms of agriculture into the future?
I mean, such a question too. I mean, I think biggest potential.
In
I think
terms
that
of growth, let's say.
yeah. I mean, I think that if I mean, I'm in the UAE right now, and the UAE has a lot of challenges
Yep.
to get the sector going here. A lot of those
Mm-hmm.
challenges are, the farms here that do exist, which people don't really realize that, but there's a lot of family farms here in the UAE
Yep.
that exist, but they're very inefficient and they're subsidized. So
Mm.
there's a huge opportunity to make them more productive that could have significant sustainability and economic benefits. So I see great potential here, even beyond the UAE's own economy. This could be a hub and is already becoming a hub for the region. So just like the
Mm-hmm.
Netherlands exports huge amounts of food product, but
Yeah.
also knowledge and capacity, the UAE could do that
Mm-hmm.
for the GCC region at least, if not the MENA region.
Mm.
There's other countries like that I've been to recently, like Tunisia, that have so much potential just to improve their water use through
Mm.
relatively simple irrigation strategies or added value production for the farmers to make more money. That's just a country I went to for the first time this year for some work we're doing there, and I think that's very very interesting. I mean, there's not really any country that doesn't have potential. I mean, maybe the Netherlands in some ways
Yeah.
is like saturated or advanced, and the
Yeah.
improvement is less dramatic. But I mean, Brazil has huge opportunities for agriculture to improve. It's a
Mm-hmm.
massive agriculture country. Canada, we've got. I'm going there in February. There's some really exciting things happening as far as trying to move more year-round production there,
Mm-hmm.
respond to climate change issues there.
And
Australia as well. I mean, if the list goes on. I mean, this is what's so exciting about this is it's agriculture is so global, but it's different in each place. So the opportunities
yeah.
are really contextualized, and each market has its unique opportunities. But I think there's huge potential everywhere, and the reason why that is not just because of the diversity and because of the scale, and agriculture are has the most employees of any industry, but it's also because climate change is making it more difficult for people to farm. So
Mm-hmm.
it's like a race against time. Like it's not just that agriculture isn't digitized and isn't automated, which that's one fact, but it's facing more challenges in the future. So we have to really like catch up, and that opportunity can be daunting, but I think it's the potential is almost increasing faster than we can keep up, which is scary. You know what I mean? You know what I'm saying there? It's like
Yeah.
how do we keep up with that? So
Yeah.
it's really quite enormous.
And is there some country that you would like to do business in but didn't yet get the chance to?
Yeah, I mean, honestly, we have, if you look at our map, we have no projects in Latin America and South America.
Uh-huh.
And, I speak pretty good Spanish. I've got two fluent Spanish speakers on my team.
Uh-huh.
And I sort of don't know why we haven't done any work there. Even from a time zone perspective, like most of my team is in the US, so, we could do that. So I would love to do work in Argentina, and I would love to do work in Brazil, Chile, all around South America, but we haven't quite
Uh-huh.
broken in. I mean, I don't know if we've made enough intentional efforts. Typically our clients come to us. We attract them through the content we create, and they come to us because they have a need. So we're just not getting the requests from there.
I've seen you have quite the international team. So where do you find all the people, or how does one get hired by you to work for Agritecture? Did you just meet them on your journeys?
Yeah, I think the phrase like attract, don't chase is something that, is a key part of
Uh-huh.
what agriculture does across all its work, right? So we try to create a garden that people want to be in,
Okay.
and attract them. So, whether that's the blog content that people say, oh, this is what I've been thinking about, or oh, this answers my questions, or whatever, that helps people feel like we are open, which we are, and that they can ask us anything, which they can.
Uh-huh.
And so that's how clients come to us. We also do that by the fact that I spend a lot of time traveling the world as a nomad and speaking at
Yeah.
events. Now, the same
Mm.
way that we attract clients is a similar way we attract employees.
Uh-huh.
We're not a big team, but we have actually had a decent amount of turnover in 10 years. We have people who stay for 3 years, then they move on, right? 10 years is enough time that you can have quite a bit. So we have
Uh-huh.
hired quite a few people in the 10 years. So yeah, mostly like sometimes I meet them at workshops, some meet them at events. Sometimes people reach out through the website directly. We've rarely posted jobs for applications, as opposed to getting just people reaching out through our network and
Uh-huh.
and hiring that way. And I don't know if that's the best thing to do, but that's the way we do it.
Yeah.
And it's worked pretty well for us.
Now, from a different topic, we've seen quite a few vertical farming companies shut down in the recent years
A
because of
lot.
financial problems. And would you attribute that to them growing mainly leafy greens, or some other problem with the business plan, or simply that the market went through a bubble?
Oh, I mean, I think it's easy to say like, oh, leafy greens, like it's just not important enough or big enough or whatever. But I don't think that's a good argument.
Mm-hmm.
If vertical farming can be profitable, and it can be profitable growing leafy greens, and it can solve a specific problem. 93% approximately, I think, is what of the leafy greens are grown in Arizona and California for the United States. They're
Uh-huh.
shipped across the country. They lose nutritional value. They have food safety issues that consistently
Uh-huh.
happen. Uh, Controlled environment vertical farming can be a response to that problem. You can
Uh-huh.
grow that product using non-arable land, and you can grow it close to the consumer with no pesticides and have
Yeah.
various other efficiency benefits. So that idea does have an addressable market, which is significant, and thus
Uh-huh.
it has a business case. So I think that the leafy greens issue is not really it. Now, where it does become a problem is when I'm raising money for a big business, right? A big high capex business, my investors are going to ask me, how big is the market? And as an entrepreneur, I have an incentive to say that my market is bigger than it is. And I think
Mm-hmm.
that many of the CEOs of these companies and the executive teams of these companies followed that incentive, right? There's an incentive in the Silicon Valley approach to fundraising, which many startups follow, right? Obviously, to say you have to have the biggest possible market size. So if you go out there and you say, oh, leafy greens is our market, or even just leafy greens is our market at the beginning, that's not really a good enough story for the hype, honestly, the hype that the investors are attracted to, especially VC investors. So I think to go back to your question of like what happened and what's the problem, consistently the biggest vertical farms that have raised the most money and had the biggest and most dramatic failures that I predicted would happen in my December 2021 article on AgFunder, it's because the VC model doesn't work for this, right? So you can't have VC fund something that needs a longer horizon to have a return on investment. So these are farms enabled by high technology. They are not technology companies. So the companies position themselves as technology companies to increase their valuation, and also position themselves to grow a wider variety of crops that weren't proven or they didn't have the capacity to grow to improve that story. So they're saying we're tech and we've got a huge global market. We're the future of all food. Like all food is going to be grown in our farms. And both those things are not true. They're not true. They're buying technology and integrating it, maybe inventing some, even some that they're inventing they don't need to. And they're growing leafy greens. And that alone is a challenge to be able to grow that cost competitively as, let's say, markets and consumers accept that there's a benefit to consuming higher quality leafy greens than what they're getting from Arizona and California. Yeah. So I think that's really the key problem. And I think one way to mitigate that problem, which we talk to our investors out, and there's a lot of ways to mitigate it, but we say, who on the leadership team is the farmer? You know, like who is the farmer on the senior leadership team? Because a lot of these companies, not all of them, but a lot of them didn't have agronomists and farmers who were making the final decisions. And I think if you just have business-minded people, when they look at agriculture, it tends to fail because it really is something you need a lot of patience for. I'm humbled by the knowledge of the farmer team members that I have. Sometimes I can be very naive about this as a non-farmer person. I didn't grow up on a farm. So, we need to respect the farmers. We need to respect what farms go through. We need to respect that process. And just because there's technology involved, like a vertical farm, doesn't mean that farming process doesn't exist or the slow nature of the returns on investment don't exist. Those are reality things. So I think we have an opportunity now to learn from these failures. And I think that there is a place for vertical farming as part of the food system. I'm still long on vertical farming, but we have to learn from these. Now, I just want to say one more thing. There is another factor, which is that interest rates did go up during this time. So investors went from being like, oh yeah, here's a bunch of money, and investors play a huge role in this. Here's a bunch of money, reinvent agriculture. Like we want our ESG portfolio to blah, 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 blah. Yep. And then when interest rates went up, they said, give us profits. We want profits. Now, and so these vertical farming companies were sort of really stuck because they were given money under the context of reinventing agriculture, and then suddenly money was based on making profit. And I think that's really also hard for any company to have that shift happen. So there were a number of factors. I've written a lot of articles about it, so you're welcome to read them. But certainly with the Bowery news recently, we sort of saw the same thing again happen.
So if you were to start a vertical farming company now, you either wouldn't take VC capital or you would just negotiate with them that, look guys, the return on investment is going to be long years?
I mean, I don't see how you can promise a 10x return or 20x return. Like, I don't see how you can promise that with with a farming company. I just don't see where that happens. The simply based on the fact that consumers don't pay enough for high quality food. Like, there's certain food products where they do, but as far as like overall the mass of the market, food is like relatively cheap for the Western world at least. So where's that return coming from? And like even if you say, like even if you were to say a software, right? Like so not a vertical farm is like operations, it's distribution, it's like a hardware operational business, right? But you could say, okay, what about a software product, right? I can get 10x whenever software product, right? But the software product is dependent upon farmers adopting it. And I think that like this is what I say all the time is like, in order for the agriculture industry and let's say this new ag tech industry that continues to grow and needs to grow to respond to challenges, in order for it to be sustainable and healthy, it's almost like a pyramid, right? At the bottom, we need to have profitable farmers. Like that has to be the foundation. The foundation to be profitable farmers of all kinds, right? Because we are many kinds of solutions to them. So number one is profitable farmers. That needs to be the biggest base. They should be getting the majority of the money, right? Because
Yep.
If they're getting the majority of the money, then this next base, which is technologies, hardware for the farmers, robots, irrigation solutions, greenhouses, vertical farming technologies, that's the next space, which should be smaller. That has an economic value that should be based on the profits that the farmers make. Then above that, we have the software solutions, okay, that should be based on that. And then above that is a tiny sliver that's the consultants. And that to me is a healthy industry. Instead, what we have is we have like a lot of farmers making a small amount of money, and then we have this huge boom in all these technologies and solutions and services for this. So, these companies are going to fail. Like a lot of the sector is going to fail, where there's technology companies that can't sell to farmers, or whether it's farmers, vertical farms, which are sort of bringing technology into their business and saying they're technology companies when they're farmers. So, that needs to change, basically.
I never thought about it in terms of how you were visually now explaining it. That's an eye opener. Yeah. And so my last question would be, what's the most exciting piece of technology for you right now?
Yeah, I mean, I see new technologies all the time that I get excited about. But I think like what I'm really interested in right now is because I'm working in the Middle East a lot more. So I'm really interested in what are some technological solutions that we can use to intervene to farming systems here. So here's just a couple that I've been interested in lately. One is subsoil irrigation. A lot of irrigation happens above the soil. There's pretty simple solutions to irrigate below the soil that removes evaporation. You can save like 50% of the water. And I'm particularly getting really excited these days about low-tech interventions. I've been working a lot on high-tech, a lot on vertical farms, but we've diversified a lot of the work we do, and it's so exciting for me because I'm learning new things and seeing the big impact of that. So subsoil irrigation, one company called Hydro Rock I'm really interested in that's doing that. Another one is Iris, Second Sky, which is a sort of nano film that can replace the greenhouses, and this absorbs heat into that material but allows the light in, and that could have dramatic reductions of the temperatures in greenhouses and hot climates. Really excited about that because I think it's applicable to so many greenhouses. I've always been interested in, and I've been nerding out about agrivoltaics. There's a company called Mirai Solar that has a shading structure that's movable. It's not quite, it's very new, but I'm excited about it because it provides the shading benefit and generates energy. And I would really like to see agrivoltaics advance more. I don't think it's really there yet, but I hope that we can. We're doing some work in it, and I really hope that we could do more because I don't know. I think it's really it's like a hybridization of so many things. Like even outdoor agrivoltaics is to me, we're creating protected layers over the plants that have other benefits. And so the lines between controlled indoor farming and outdoor farming are becoming blurred. And I love this. I think that like having these different camps of farming types is the wrong way to think about it. As a designer, as Agritecture, we really believe in the design thinking process. So, throw all of that out, like vertical farming versus greenhouse versus field. And like, let's just look at the context and let's like be open to all of these options. And in some cases matching them. Why don't we have a greenhouse and a vertical farm? Why don't we have agrivoltaics and a greenhouse? Like, why are we not open to mixing these things a little bit more in the context? And so that it matches, these technologies and approaches match sort of our philosophy. And that's what I'm excited about.
Would you want to add something to our conversation for closing?
I always try to add something that like relates to every single person, which is, when you go shopping and you vote with your dollars or your dirhams or your euros or your Czech crowns, whatever you're shopping with, you're making a decision, you're voting. And, we saw the election, we saw the US election, these things, you can vote in different ways, but you can really vote with your money. And I think when it comes to food, the choices you make for the restaurants you go to and the grocery stores, it's a message I like to remind myself and others, every single person can vote with their money. And so just try to be conscious on what you're doing and what your family's doing to vote for the future you want to have.
All right. Well, thank you very much. The time is up almost, and it was a really exciting conversation with you.
My pleasure. Thanks for having me. Díky moc krát.
Není vůbec zač. Tak naschledanou, ať se daří.